It's all about the butterflies. Interestingly, I didn't have any problems communicating with these Golden Blade 15 and 16-year-olds. First time I ever worked with that age group. They did what I asked of them. I provided the space they needed to make their own decisions, good or bad. We operated via mutual respect. I think that's because they had mostly already turned into butterflies. I should explain. I will be referring to this comparative transformation more than once throughout this story. I believe that children go through 4 stages of life, like a butterfly. We all start out as eggs. That's easy to understand. Children then enter the larva, or caterpillar stage, and remain there for most of their childhood. Happy, carefree kids, crawling and running around, not paying much attention to the world around them. But sometime around age 10 or 11, a boy, I don't have enough data for girls, but assume the timelines are similar, enters the pupa, or chrysalis stage. At this point, they become very interested in almost everything, constantly asking questions, often good questions. They become sponges, sopping up as much information as they can gather. They listen to everything and take it all in. Of course, often you will find much younger children gathering information, collecting data. A good example is my nephew Kyle, who as a child was constantly absorbing all the things around him. He learned how to play hockey by watching others play. My mom called him papuga in Polish, which means parrot. He would try to imitate what he had seen, but wasn't quite ready to analyze that information to develop his own personal palette of good traits and values, to define his moral compass. This pupa stage will last to age 13 or 14, depending upon a boy's development and sometimes even environment. They are very, very impressionable during this stage. Things they learn and discover as pupas will continue to provide the basis for all their future learning. It's at this stage when you can instill values: fairness, kindness, understanding, honesty, thankfulness, generosity, respect, determination, positive thinking, and empathy. Never giving up and never settling for good enough. This is why I spent so many of my youth hockey years with pupas. I wanted to make a difference in their lives. Younger players are simply not ready to absorb this kind of knowledge. I talk to boys, now men and fathers of their own, often. Either through conversing with them or by their own admission, I know I had an impact, sometimes a significant impact on their lives. Always a positive impact, subliminal as it may have been at the time. These values were not always conveyed simply through words, as actions speak louder than words. I very often demonstrated these beliefs through the things I did for all the boys I worked with. They observed what I did, the way I treated them and others, incorporating those positive qualities into their own belief system, sometimes reinforcing what they had already acquired from their families, sometimes completely changing their perspective. For Chris, I filled in the cracks and added the final puzzle pieces during the critical pupa stage that he would carry through his life and most assuredly passed along to you. At 13 or 14, boys begin to turn into butterflies, but it could take 2 or even 3 years for them to completely develop, breaking out of their protective cocoons to spread their wings, turning into young adults and flying off into our uncertain world. During that final stage, boys take all the information gathered in the pupa stage, reason with and rationalize the data, form opinions, discard mistruths, and draw conclusions. Their beliefs become firm and resolute. It's after they have turned into butterflies and spread their wings that they can take on the responsibility for their actions and make their own good or bad decisions. Many boys, in their haste to spread their wings, will try to declare their independence in young adulthood, the terrible teens, This is something that can't be forced, though. It must happen on its own, as painful and frustrating as that may be for some. There is no one-size-fits-all metamorphosis. Just like puberty, every boy will be different, so they all have to be treated differently. I can spend 15 minutes with a teenager and tell if they have spread their wings. It's not that hard. At 14, your dad had barely started the butterfly stage. It wasn't until he turned 16 that he had spread his wings and transformed into a young adult. When did you become a butterfly? My metamorphosis was accelerated by a family tragedy. I had become an independent thinking butterfly before age 15. I should clarify, all of the observations above were made based on boys I knew from the 70s and 80s. The world has changed significantly since then, as has the timeline for pupas and butterflies. Recently, academics and experts have suggested that the age adolescence ends changed from 19 to 24. 24? What's going on? I have limited data these days, although I did see this coming more than a decade ago. The only conclusion I can make is that there are not enough gyms in the world, not enough good mentors to guide our young pupas through their most formative years. At the end of a young person's pupa stage, which is closer to 15 these days, they don't have the proper tools, values, convictions to grow and break out of that cocoon to become butterflies. Instead, they remain trapped in that dried-out cocoon, afraid to face the real world, unable to cope with adversity and disappointment, comforted by the protection of the cocoon, not having to take responsibility for anything. It saddens me and is the primary catalyst for writing this book. I fear that this is leading us down a path to idiocracy. You have all seen the movie and know the story. If we can't count on some of the brightest minds our current generation is creating today, who is going to lead us into tomorrow? Will the age of adolescence keep moving upward? How can we stop it? Well, it starts with good mentoring and reading the rest of this book. Learn how to water your seedlings, your children, with clean, fresh water, not bitter-tasting electrolyte. A glimpse of the future tells us how that turns out. Positive values, not biased rhetoric. Give your pupa the vast knowledge of the universe, free of subjective opinion. Answer every question. If you don't know the answer, find it. Put down the smartphones, slow your life down, and spend quality time with your pupas. Give them every available minute in your day. While it's fun and heartwarming to spend time with toddlers and young children, pupas need your attention more than any time in their lives. It's your responsibility to do the right thing, to prepare them for becoming beautiful butterflies at age 16 or 17, not 24, after the protective cocoons have fallen away, leaving them vulnerable and unprepared for the real world. Here is the conclusion of another recent study. Phone-addicted teens aren't as happy as those who play sports and hang out in real life. Did they really need a study to figure this out? If you don't feel that you are up to the task of mentoring your pupa, or you need help, you may want to seek out a good mentor, a gym. It may be a relative, a neighbor, or a hockey coach, even a hockey trainer. I'm going to be a little biased here, but I really do believe that ice hockey is the best activity for every young boy and girl to grow from becoming inquisitive pupas into strong, self-reflecting butterflies. It's a tough sport to master, requiring all your pupa's attention, forcing them to think each time they step on the ice. It demands teamwork, trust, dedication, confidence, determination, being free of harmful habits, all good positive values. The friendships they forge will last a lifetime. You will find many excellent mentors in youth hockey programs because most were players themselves, honoring the mentors who helped them become butterflies, paying it forward. I am amazed that 50-year-old former players, some still play, can remember the names of every player on a team when they were 12 and still consider them friends 4 decades later. Many can recall almost every goal they ever scored, describing it in detail. Our minds can't remember everything that's happened in our lives. We store highlights, best and often some worst moments. Former youth hockey players retain all this information. It must be important to them. I know it is. If hockey is not your thing or is simply not available, then seek out an activity and mentor that will challenge your pupa and continually tax their brain, forcing them to think. It's important that you do this. You only get one chance to nurture the pupa. Okay, sermon is over. That was a slew to absorb. Take a break. We have a lot more work to do.